Good afternoon. I want to welcome these leaders for coming in to have this very important discussion about some of the most pressing issues of our time. I am Kamala Harris. My pronouns are she and her. I am a woman sitting at the table wearing a blue suit. And
very well. Nice to see you.
Hey, team. You were really good. Oh my God.
Thank you. And we can see, for example, from today's GDP report that growth in private demand has slowed. That does indicate an economy that is transitioning to more steady and sustainable growth.
I'm going to shush up.
We're going to transition here and move the press out.
One of the things that I find is I look at, and I take it very seriously, the confidence level of the American people in the economy, and they're so down, and they're looking. There's reason to be down, but I started thinking about it, and Brian and you and I talked about it just a little bit. You know, the first year we were able to, with the rescue plan, we were able to send them a check for $8,000. I mean, a check. One, and beyond that, by the way, there's more than that. But if you're making $120,000 and you get a check for $8,000, that's a lot of money. And so it helped save a lot of people in terms of getting thrown out of their homes and rental housing and a whole range of things. But I started thinking about it, just as somebody who's raised a middle-class kid. One year, even though you didn't have the job you have now, even though you didn't get a raise that year, the difference between having a job, having a 5% raise or whatever, 3, 5, 7, whatever it happens to be, in the face of inflation, the price of the pump, although that's down every day so far, but, it's like, whoa, I feel worse off. But then again, I didn't get a check for $8,000 from the government. They just, among other things. Does that make any sense to anybody, or is it just me?
Today, the president argued that the economy is not in a recession. And it was a year ago that the president said that inflation would be temporary. So the question is, why should Americans take his word for it now when the president got it wrong on the economy a year ago?
So here's, when we talk about recession and we talk about where we are currently today, what we look at and what we speak to is the facts, is what other experts are saying and what the textbook definition is of recession. And we're seeing the resiliency of business investment, we're seeing the resiliency of consumer buying power, and that matters. Those are the broad factors that we look at.
But Corinne, what do you say to Americans who say, this is really a discussion about semantics, whatever you want to call it? You have Americans all across the country who say it is harder for them to make ends meet every month. They're hurting. And
this is a president who understands that. We have talked about that. We have talked about how we understand what the American people are feeling. We understand what that conversation they are having around the kitchen table about how they're going to deal with cost.
Millions of Americans have used Paxlovid. I tell you what, I think I used it. No, Paxlovid, including me.
If things are going so great, though, then why is it the White House officials are trying to redefine recession?
No, we're not redefining recession.
If we all understand a recession to be 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth in a row, and then you have White House officials come up here to say, no, that's not what a recession is. It's something else. How is that not redefining recession?
Because that's not the definition. That is not the definition.
Brian Deese said in 2008, of course, economists have a technical definition, which is of a recession, which is 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth.
I can tell you this.
Yesterday he said 2 negative quarters of GDP growth is not the technical definition of a recession.
It is
What
not.
changed?
It is not.
Why did he say that
It
was?
is not. I can
What's the
I can
difference other
speak
than who the
to
president
I
is?
can speak to what he said yesterday in front of all of you, which is the last thing that you just repeated. There are many factors. There are many factors, economic factors and indicators to consider, and I will say that the textbook definition of recession is not 2 negative quarters of GDP. And I said this before. I said this last week about Republicans using migrants as a political tool, and that is shameful and that is just wrong. So what Republicans are doing, the way that they're meddling in the process and using migrants as a political pawn is just wrong.
So the White House's preference would be for small towns in Texas and Arizona to have to take care of these migrants rather than a large metropolitan
That is
city
not what I
like
said.
Washington, D.C.
That is not what I said.
That is what
That-
you
no,
said.
that
You
is
said you
not-
think
I
that people
said
are
that
using
there is-
migrants.
Yeah, they are. They're sending migrants to big cities on purpose,
if
using
they-
them as a political ploy.
So if they don't go to big cities, where should they
There's
go?
a process. I just
There's
laid it out.
There's
There's
a process, and they come to a big city, and now
That
the
is-
mayor says she needs the National Guard.
That's
So
because Republicans are using migrants who are coming here. They're coming here for a better life, and they are being used. Peter, they're being used by Republican governors. That is what's
does any
happening.
of this just make the president want to say this is causing a lot of burdens on small cities, big cities? Maybe I should just close the border.
What I'm saying is what Republicans are doing is wrong.
We need space, and we need the federal government to be involved. So I've asked for the deployment of the Guard, as long as we need the Guard to deal with the humanitarian